And good evening. This is Radio KD8TTE. We are preparing for the 0200 Zulu net for the DOD COMEX 22-2. This is Tuesday evening here in the U.S. That will be the 040200 Zulu net. We're going to be starting in about 4.5 minutes. Right now, we've got a bunch of DOD stations that are on channel 1, 60 meters. The dial frequency there is 5330.5 kilohertz USB. The stations are all able to hear each other and are presently working out a schedule to ensure that each of the teams is able to achieve their objectives, call the stations that they need without interfering with one another. Hopefully, we'll hear some improvement over last night as everybody is sort of working out how to make this work. So 5 megahertz, we're hearing pretty good distance, but I am hearing some Ohio stations and some other nearby. I've got Ohio and Illinois stations that I've been able to hear very clearly this evening so far in the last few minutes. Sounds like the frequency is starting to settle down a bit. A few minutes ago, we had lots of chatter, lots of people tuning up and all that sort of thing. So it sounds like we're going to have a fair number of stations that are at least listening, if not called to active participation in the net. So once again, the rhythm that we have for this exercise is that on the 0200 Zulu nets, there is a request for information. DOD stations will call for stations in a particular geography if they go like they did last night, and then will request some sort of observed information about a bridge or about something. It can be anything. The idea of this exercise is that they're collecting ground truth information so that that information could be fed back to planners who would be able to organize support for response to a disaster or some other kind of emergency. We do not have information about a particular scenario so far. Earlier today, we did a couple of live streams where we were checking in or checking out what the WWV was transmitting during the DOD windows, and we were getting the same message that we had been for the last week, which is very much about the start of the exercise and how to get coordinated. We got somebody who's just tuning up and is totally off frequency, so we're going to notch that out just because that's just extra annoying and is really just pointless. And we got somebody else wants to tune up in a different place. This is fantastic. So the reason I say that tuning up is off frequency is because all emissions on this channel are meant to take place in the middle of the channel. So when we got somebody who's tuning up and instead of being centered at 5332 kilohertz, they are down at 5331 and change. Clearly, there's a problem. So again, the frequency is 60 meters, channel 1. The dial frequency is 5330.5 kilohertz, upper sideband. Hopefully the audio from the radio is good, not overpowering, but at least as clear as I'm hearing, which is variable in quality. All right, it is 0200 Zulu. We are at the point where I expect we're going to have some start of activity here. And now we're tuning, but somebody is in fact tuning right in the middle of the channel, which is the right place to be transmitting. Alpha Romeo 5 Juliet India is making a call. Answered by ECHOMAIN. As the radio check procedure, they're exchanging signal reports. And there we have Alpha Romeo 5 Juliet Delta. Nice strong signal from him. All right, so going in order, that generally means that the net is going to be established with each station having a particular spot. We have a bunch of different DOD stations, so they may actually mean something specific by order. They might be talking about the BRAVOMAIN. This is BRAVOMAIN making a call for stations in Princeton, New Jersey, or another area nearby, looking for information. I didn't catch what they were looking for, but said you can report back here or at tomorrow's 1200 noon net. All right, what they've called for is ping times for an IP address 8.8.8.8. So ping time, this is an internet protocol that is used to measure and to do various things with the network. It's used for a lot of control and measurement of quality on the internet. Ping is going to measure round trip times for a connection between your machine and some particular destination. The request to 8.8.8.8, that's a system that is very well known. It serves domain name service. All right, here we go. So now we've got, so the request is to get ping times, and we've got somebody who's answering the radio call, but he doesn't know what that means. He's like, how do I get that information? Well, yeah. All right.
This is BRAVOMAIN. One more call. Any amateur station located in the Princeton, New Jersey, or the Columbus, New Jersey area, request time to IPSS 8888. Provide this information now or return to this frequency, a new local time, and call for BRAVOMAIN. I'll copy over.
There's something very curious going on here. They're making this transmission in the blind. It's not to anybody in particular, but then follows with a request, how copy. Nobody particular on the other side of the circuit. I'm not sure whom they're asking. If you can't hear, you're not going to be able to hear them saying, CHARLIEMAIN calling. All right, so now this is a call from CHARLIEMAIN to College Park, Maryland, or Ashburn, Virginia. All right, so this is CHARLIEMAIN is doing the same thing, but he's asking for stations to respond with their call sign only. This is going to be a more orderly way to find out who is out there and might be able to respond. We had a little bit of a soup sandwich with that previous round. People responding, willing to help. Right. So I've got a question here asking about the frequency 5332. That's the center frequency. So if you're in USB mode, that'll be 5330.5 USB. So if you're dialing that up in USB mode, it'll be 1500 hertz down. If you are looking at the center frequency is 5332. The antenna that I'm on is a off-center fed dipole. It is 132 feet in length. I've got the balun up at about 35 feet, with the ends up at 12 to 15 feet. So we have another transmission. Sounds like FOXTROTMAIN. FOXTROTMAIN sounds like maybe pre-recorded. All right, FEMA Region III. Those are the male voice that's calling right now. That's CHARLIEMAIN. FEMA Region 3, that makes sense. Region, 1, 2, 3, Alpha Bravo Charlie. That might be a clue. Yeah, the Foxtrot station is new on the channel. Earlier, when the various DOD stations were coordinating, I did not hear Foxtrot on the channel, so it's possible that Foxtrot is uncoordinated. This kind of thing can happen when you have the conditions in HF, the band changing, going long as the night conditions settle in. You'll have some stations that are connected to one another. They're able to hear another group that's working over here, and they're able to hear one another. As the band propagation gets longer, then they can start to grow into one another, and where you had two independent nets able to operate, they suddenly become one great big net. until they can hear each other reliably, you get a situation like I'm in, where I'm in the middle of them and I hear them both. It's possible that they don't hear each other at the moment. Welcome to HF. Yeah, so Foxtrot sounded to me like it was pre-recorded, but she is now responding to others. There's some back and forth going on there. Okay, so this is a condition where we've got somebody's requesting, can you come back at noon tomorrow? And somebody's saying, oh, we got another net. That's a lot of chatter. You don't need to tell them all that. Somebody asked if you can be there. You can either, yes, I can be there, or no, I can't. All right, we got, I think it's Charlie is telling Foxtrot to wait. And there's Foxtrot again, not waiting. So this is a really pretty interesting condition what we've got going on. It sounds to me like we've got the DOD stations that are probably working out what's maybe a new procedure for them, especially for doing outreach to amateurs, where they have stations strategically placed throughout the United States, trying to make transmissions. There's Delta Main. All right, so now we have Delta Main calling for amateur radio stations in Miami, Florida, Raleigh, North Carolina. As I was saying, I think that this might be a new procedure for DOD doing outreach to amateur stations, where they have various stations strategically located so that on a single frequency, they're able to try to cover a large area like the continental United States. Obviously requires some coordination between the stations so that they don't interfere with one another. It's actually fairly difficult to pull this off. I expect that this is probably a good training experience for the DoD stations that are involved in this, and probably is a good experiment for seeing how well this kind of procedure can actually work. So I hear three separate nets going on at the same time. There's Delta Main is the strongest one. That's the one we hear right there. That's Delta Main. I heard two others. One is Foxtrot, and I can't make out what the other one is. Gulf Main is now calling. All right, so we've got Foxtrot, Golf, and Delta are all operating at the same time. If I was correct about this Alpha Bravo Charlie FEMA Regions 1, 2, 3, that also means that we're going to be listening here in Ohio. I'm in FEMA Region 5, so I should be listening for Echo, if I've got that right. We'll find out pretty soon, I guess. All right, here comes ECHOMAIN. Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati. That's me. Want average ping time. 8888.
Cincinnati, Ohio, that can perform average ping time test to IP address 8.8.8.8. All now.
ECHOMAIN. All right, somebody else is calling, so I'm backing off so I'm not doubling. Now, this is somebody who's calling in, and he's reading back a whole bunch of stuff, and he's repeating himself and all kinds of stuff. He hasn't made sure that he's actually got the whole thing. He's using pro word out. He's now identifying afterward. ECHOMAIN, this is Kilo Delta 8 Tango Tango Echo. Over. Here we go. I got his attention. ECHOMAIN, this is Kilo Delta 8 Tango Tango Echo. Roger, you are good readable. I am Columbus, Ohio. I have average ping times. Over. This is Kilo Delta 8 Tango Tango Echo. Negative. I cannot return at 1200 tomorrow. I can report now. Over. This is Kilo Delta 8 Tango Tango Echo. I report average ping time 3 decimal 346 millisecond. Over. This is Kilo Delta 8 Tango Tango Echo. Roger, out. All right, so I was able to get in there. I was able to get Net Control's attention. We had that back and forth. We exchanged a signal report. He told me how well he's hearing me. That way I know, am I going to have to speak particularly slowly? Am I going to have to use words twice procedure or anything like that? Once I had his attention, we were able to establish not just the quality of the circuit, but he asked me if I can report back at 1200 tomorrow. My plan was to be here, but I've been called into a thing that I have to deal with at noon tomorrow. So I'm not able to do that. I do have the data right in front of me. I just computed it as he was making the call. So I was able to do that. I had the information for him, and I was able to read that back. You'll notice that I used the military procedure when I was reading off the figures, 33.346 millisecond, tree decimal 346, and then I used millisecond. I spelled out the unit of measure. I didn't just read back Mike Sierra or something that might be ambiguous. So, you know, in pointing out some of the other exchanges and some of the things that weren't coming together very well, by comparison to what I was doing, the point is not to point at somebody else and saying, hey, your operation is not clean or anything like that. But wait. Okay, so I was just listening right there because they were talking to each other about my report. I wanted to make sure that they had my report correct. And if there was a problem with any of that, then I would come in there with a correction as necessary. So again, the point with being able to draw some distinction between the way that I was performing that exchange, the way that I'm demonstrating that, and pointing out some of the things that others were doing is not to make fun of anybody or to anything like that. The point is just to show that when you are actually engaged in the exchange, it's actually very difficult when you're trying to think about the procedure. When the procedure is a little bit foreign, whenever you've got anything else going on, when you're fighting these kinds of conditions, you can't quite hear what's going on. It's really difficult. So uh, anybody who's operating and they're making mistakes today, it's like this is an exercise. This is the time to make the mistakes. We are all going to make the mistakes, and if I did a good job with that exchange, well, that's because I got all my mistakes out of my system in earlier nets. So, by all means, engage with these kinds of opportunities to exercise, deal with whatever conditions you've got. And that's going to give you a greater degree of comfort. It's going to give you a greater degree of experience. And that's going to make it more natural so that you wind up not having to think about the procedure. You're able just to get right into the groove, and the procedure is actually going to be there to guide you through the process of identifying and exchanging the most critical information, and to do so efficiently. And that's really the reason why we're doing all of this. We don't use pro words and all of this kind of stuff because we think it sounds cool. The point is to be able to exchange information efficiently. So here we are. We're about 22 minutes into this net. We have gone through alpha to echo, and we heard foxtrot earlier. It sounds like they are. They're going to have some alternates make some calls now. Wow, that's 5 Juliet Delta is coming in really strong. This is nice.
Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati, Ohio. We are looking for the average ping time to the IP address of 8.8.8.8. Again, specific report out of Columbus and Cincinnati for your average ping time to IP address 8.8.8.8. We will take any information with that information now, or you can come back to tomorrow's noon net and bring the information. Any amateur radio station.
All right, cool. We'll turn that down a little bit. So again, not only have they gone through, they've got ECHOMAIN and some other Echo stations, but they also were calling for other Mars stations that they've got in the circuit, who again are reading back the call. And they're relaying stations maybe that are able to hear them, but are not able to hear the other. All right. All right. We'll All right. So this is pretty interesting. I mean, okay. So we've got the situation again that we've got the various stations that are calling. They've got Mars stations that are in the circuit, and they have the Mars stations repeating that same call back. So the idea is that they're able to get stations that are able to hear from around the area. Propagation being what it is with HF, you don't always have consistent coverage. It's not necessarily going to be like in VHF, where you've got a relatively predictable footprint. Um, Especially as we're moving, through later into the night, later into the day, that kind of thing. Conditions change. That's why it's useful to have all of these other stations around making these repeated calls. Now, in what's going on here, that's kind of interesting, is that we've got a station that is again on. They're very happy to help. They want to be useful. The request that they've got though is to get ping times for this particular address. And it sounded like maybe they didn't really understand exactly what that meant. So when we're talking about a ping time, again, that's where we have the ability to measure the round trip time. That is how long it takes for a packet on the network to get from your host to another host, that is another system on the network, and then to come back again. 8.8.8.8 is a particular system that's run by Google. It performs domain name service, that is the mapping of IP addresses to names, and names like google.com back to IP addresses. So that's sort of like an internet phone book, if you will. And that's the way that we're able to work with websites. We don't have to remember a whole bunch of numbers. Computers like numbers rather than names, and that's the reason why we have that system, the domain name system. So, okay, so what we've got there is, in asking for information about ping times, this is really interesting. Think about this in the context of a post-disaster situation. If you've got a hurricane or tornadoes or something, if you want to get an understanding of where infrastructure has been damaged or where infrastructure is still in good shape, ping times are going to be a good way to tell. A network that is overloaded, for example, is going to have an increasing amount of ping time. It's going to be slower and slower. That is more and more time, greater and greater latency in these connections that are being made. And that's the reason why asking for ping times is helpful. Now, a station that wants to participate, somebody who wants to help in an exercise like this, they don't really need to have the ping times. This is just to create an idea of the kinds of traffic, the kinds of messages, the kind of information that would be helpful. But in a real emergency, a real disaster, it's important to get a good ping time that is from your system to another. And so this is a condition where if you don't know what they're asking for, you don't know how to get the kind of information that you're asking for, but then you find some way to do it. For example, online, you might actually not be helping. You might actually be hindering by injecting bogus information. So there was a station earlier that it sounded like they didn't really know for sure what they were asking for. It sounds like they did some poking around on the internet, and they found a service that would perform pings for them. And so they put the ping into that website, did a ping for the Google 8.8.8.8. And hang on. All right, ECHOMAIN calling again. And so in this case, we've got a system connecting to a website, and that website is being instructed to make a ping to this site that we care about. And what we're getting back is the ping time, not between where this requested system is, not in that requested geography, but we're getting the ping time between these two sites. Those two sites are on very fast networks and so on. So it gives you a very, very low ping time. It shows very low latency. The problem is that's now information that's being reported from this station back here. And that station back here is in the geography where the requester is interested in. But the data coming from this particular station is not uh, going to reflect the condition of this station. It's going to be a report that, in fact, comes from other site to the site that we care about. So we are getting this measurement, not this measurement, which is really what we're looking for. So, this is a little bit technical about the kinds of things that we're doing when we're talking about measuring network activity and so on. But it's a really good example of why, when we are engaged with these exercises, of course, it's helpful for us just to be able to practice procedures and so on. But thinking about the kinds of information that is being requested, what kinds of impact that can have in terms of the way that they would want to use the information, the kinds of tools that we might need to have, the kinds of skills that we might need to have in the process of collecting information and being able to report information. This is super helpful for that. So hopefully this is the kind of thing that will give some exposure to people who might not know what some of these things are, and get them thinking along the lines of how to make sure they're able to gather the information and to report information that can be useful for a disaster response kind of situation. And this is ECHOMAIN closing the net.
And stations with reporting traffic can report at noon Eastern Time with their report. This is ECHOMAIN. The frequency is free and returns to normal amateur radio net or normal amateur radio east. ECHOMAIN out.
All right. ECHOMAIN closed the net. Alpha X-ray, Delta X-ray.
Exercise. The DOD is requesting information for COMEX 22-2.
Okay, so Delta.
From the following cities: Miami, Florida.
Okay, so now Delta's coming back on. So Echo has finished, and Echo, as I suspected, Echo does cover FEMA Region 5, and that's where we are. So our net has been secured. We are now closed. Delta has now picked it up. I presume that they'll go back through Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, so on, while they shut them all down. So for our purposes, we're finished this evening. We were able to hear some stations. We had some good signals tonight. Very nice to hear everybody who's participating, and we were in the area that was called. That was great. Last night was kind of a bummer. We're hanging around waiting for something to happen, but not so much. Again, that doesn't mean that we weren't useful. The point with a lot of these things is that we as operators need to be there, and readiness is the name of the game. So the call came. We were ready. We were able to respond to it. We were able to provide just the information that they were looking for. Unfortunately, we're not able to return at noon tomorrow, but we do have the information. They were able to receive it. We were able to give it to them in a timely and efficient manner. We didn't have to spend a whole lot of time going back and forth with them. It wasn't a big conversation. We didn't have to talk about what these tools are and so on. We just got them the information that they need, and we understood what they were asking for. So we know for sure that we were providing them exactly the sort of thing that they needed to know. So tonight was a great net. Thank you for joining me. I'm glad that you were able to ride along, and I hope that this encourages you. If you have not reported into this net, that you will be doing so in the future evenings. We're going to be running for several more days. This is the evening of the 3rd. So we've got the 4th, 5th, 6th, 3 more evening nets, and then the noon nets, 3 more of those, the last of which is noon on Saturday the 7th. So thank you again, and I hope to hear you on the air, and I hope you've enjoyed this. 7-3, this is Radio KD8 TTE, out.